Some interesting new reports posted here about the ongoing attempts by the Democrats to steal the midterms. We're now over a week after the actual date of the midterms, and they are accusing the Democrats. Democrats have been accused of trying to steal the election after the fact. Brenda Snipes at the center of this controversy. Now, interesting update today, and they said that some of these decisions had come from last week, but I don't think it would actually. This has all been known to the public until a lot of this info based off a Politico article just from this morning. Looking at the Zero Hedge recap here, they're saying that Florida Department of State last week has asked federal prosecutors to investigate official election documents with the dates changed. So there are these altered election documents. This is just one of the unusual things going on. Evidence that these votes are being tampered with, or that they're trying to rig this election. One piece of evidence is now that they're found these documents with dates changed on them, with which they say that the department has said can be tied back to the Florida Democratic Party. So according to Politico, they link to the original article. They pull a quote here, though, that reads, the concerns about the investigation, they're saying the concerns which the department says can be tied to the Florida Democratic Party center around the date changes on forms used to fix vote by mail ballots sent with incorrect or missing information, known as cure affidavits. Those documents they had been used to fix mail ballots. They were due no later than 5 p.m. on November 5th, the day before the election. But the affidavits released on Tuesday by the DOS show that these documents from 4 different counties, said the ballots could be returned by 5 p.m. on Thursday, which is not accurate. Unsurprisingly, one of the counties under scrutiny is Broward. That is where Brenda Snipes is overseeing things, and she has a long history of controversy, to put it lightly. Broward County, which is now conducting no less than 6 recounts after the results of 3 statewide races and 3 local legislative races have been called into question amid array of different things again, including mysteriously found ballots and lingering questions over the chain of custody governing the proper handling of voting materials. Republicans are pointing to Broward elections chief Brenda Snipes' dubious history of election gaffes. Democrats trying to claim that she's just incompetent or this is an accident, but she's been in this position for many elections and going back years. Evidence of rigging. So why was she still in this position to mess up, as they're trying to claim she's done? It seems like it was intentional, that she's intentionally rigging it for the Democrats, but that excuse doesn't even hold up. She shouldn't still be in that spot. She should have been removed already, with many suggesting that she is rigging the election in favor of the Democratic candidates. More on the update today, and I also want to look at statements from Pam Bondi, saying that there is a criminal investigation of election fraud in Florida. She's officially opened one. She made some statements about that last night as well. They are saying here that the Florida DOS has repeatedly insisted that their employees sent to observe the Broward election process have seen no hard evidence of election fraud, waiting until Tuesday to acknowledge that it had turned over info to federal prosecutors last week on November 9th. The DOS interim general counsel, Bradley McVeigh, has asked that the altered dates be investigated. Quote here reads, altering a form in a manner that provides the incorrect date for a voter to cure a defect imposes a burden on the voter significant enough to frustrate the voter's ability to vote, said McVeigh on November 9th. In a recently released set of emails, one voter had reported receiving a call from the Democratic Party after she was sent a cure affidavit with the wrong date. This quote says, the records released by DOS, which is part of Governor Rick Scott's administration, point the finger at the Florida Democratic Party. Political parties can get daily lists. They get daily lists of people who had their mail-in ballots rejected. political parties or anyone else can also get the publicly available cure affidavits and send them to voters who had a mail-in ballot rejected to encourage them to fix the ballots. In an email chain released as part of the Department of State's Tuesday document release, Citrus County Supervisor of Elections Susan Gill last week told DOS officials that a voter who received one of these cure affidavits with the wrong date had also received a call from a number identified as the Tallahassee office of the Florida Democratic Party. This is an indication that the party was reaching out about her vote by mail ballot. When I called it, it is the Democratic Party of Florida. Woman said that she thinks the incorrect date was used since whoever sent the cure affidavit swapped the deadline for cure affidavits with the deadline for provisional ballots. Big problem here is the fact that they changed one of the DOE forms, she said, in a different email. They've also, County Supervisor of Elections has said that he believes that the affidavits came from the Florida Democratic Party. Please pass the word to the FDP that they cannot arbitrarily add their own deadline to your form or VBM cures. In a Tuesday interview on Politico, he said that he'd received an email from someone sending a cure affidavit marked with the wrong date that included the Florida Democratic Party email address. The email does contain the email address votes@floridadems.org, which is associated with the party, saying that a spokeswoman for the Florida Democratic Party brushed off the issue, claiming that Scott's administration is using it as a distraction. That's what they're claiming. Courts have already forced Rick Scott to drop a lawsuit after false claims of fraud, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement rejected his desperate attempts to interfere with the important work of counting ballots. That's what they're arguing back. Now Scott is once again trying to divert attention and resources from a smooth and successful recount. I don't know how they can say that with a straight face, claim that this is a smooth and successful recount. Like, successful for who exactly? A lot of other evidence that some higher up people in the Democratic Party, some major Democratic backers, are still working to influence this election. Possibly you have one organization that consists of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign, and is also financed by George Soros as well. They are volunteering to help with the Florida recount, saying that they are going to have volunteers to help in a variety of roles in the recount process, including observing at polls, data processing, and logistics organization. That's what they're saying. Soros and Hillary's friends are going to help with the recount too. Then there's also these statements from Pam Bondi, Florida Attorney General, saying that she is opening a criminal investigation. And it's interesting because it seems like she's had some kind of conflict with the local law enforcement, who she had claimed has refused to launch an investigation. And they had fired back after law enforcement, saying that they are deeply troubled by Attorney General Pam Bondi's thoughts that they would not be pursuing investigations into potential criminal activity related to last week's elections. Regardless, it seems like Bondi has been forcing the launch of an investigation. She made these statements at Fox yesterday in an interview. She was asked, there's this investigation, what can you tell us about it in Florida? And Attorney General in Florida, Bondi, had responded saying, well, I, of course, will not go into any details about the criminal investigation, but I felt very strongly in my independent authority as chief legal officer and law enforcement officer for the state of Florida that we had to get Florida Department of Law Enforcement involved in this, do interviews. There have been so many allegations, but I've had my prosecutors on the ground in Lauderdale. We have the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement has also opened a tip hotline for folks to call. You can go on their website and get it. I can give it out. But if folks feel that they have seen evidence of fraud, call that in. We are clearly doing an investigation. We have made no conclusions, but this is about the integrity of our election process and where it leads. I want to be sure that voters know that our process is going to be fair and legal. Hannity had pointed out that that there was a judge on Friday that said that the Florida Constitution had been violated. Look at the canvassing board. This is Florida law. Shall report all early voting and all tabulated vote by mail results to the Department of State within 30 minutes after the polls closed. That didn't happen. She says, right. Responds, canvassing board shall report, with the exception of the provisional ballot results, an update in the office every 45 minutes. It was supposed to have observers in there. That didn't happen as well. Another thing that went wrong, or that's what the claim is, that it's incompetence, but it looks like evidence of a cover-up of wrongdoing. And he says 65 of the 67 Florida counties included the Panhandle. 37 of those counties, or 35 of them, they were ravaged after the hurricane. They all got the job done. That's right. How is it that this keeps happening in Broward County? Why does this continue to happen? And Bondi responded, well, and that's what we're looking into, and that's what I can't go to in detail. But what you said was clearly laid out in a letter that I sent to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement saying why we need to open a criminal investigation. That has now been done. So they've launched, describing it as a criminal investigation, and they point out that at the same time, they say there's an active criminal investigation. At the same time, Sean, you know, there are countless, at least 7 civil lawsuits filed by the DNC, by the ACLU, I believe by the League of Women Voters. All these civil lawsuits seem like these are civil lawsuits on the other side. They are basically trying to, as you know, throw out deadlines. The deadline has already been pushed back, and they're continuing to try to push it, throw these deadlines out. So Bondi's saying they're basically trying to make this midterm recount into the wild, wild west. I mean, without deadlines, how do you manage elections? And they also don't want to require signatures for provisional and vote by mail ballots. And let me make this very clear. Florida law expressly and unambiguously states that you must have signature verification. So what they want to do, they want to change the law after the ballots have all been cast and go back to retroactively. They want to go back retroactively and change the law after, which is ridiculous. And Bill Nelson needs to take a deep breath and concede gracefully and walk away from this. So interview was probably interesting to watch from last night. That was handily on Fox yesterday. Bondi not going into too much detail, obviously, about this investigation, but it is also interesting that it comes right after this feud that she had been having with the local law enforcement, saying that she is deeply troubled by their lack of action. Now a criminal investigation has been opened, so that's suggesting that there wasn't one before, while law enforcement had said that they were deeply troubled, that she claimed that they weren't looking into it. I'll follow up as more details come out. Let me know what you think about these most recent updates. I am over on patreon.com/realityreader. I have a link in the video description, a link to my PayPal, and links to the articles if you want to look at that in full. Leave a comment, tell me what you think. I'll follow up soon. Thank you.